In Pakistan's Chitral district, there is a mountain known as the King of Darkness. This mountain is called Terichmir, and it is about 45 kilometers away from Chitral city. It is said that this mountain is extremely mysterious. According to the elders of the area, something exists inside this mountain that is under the control of fairies and jinn. People believe that thousands of years-old treasure is buried within it, while some also say that a world of fairies is hidden inside this mountain. There are certain paths on this mountain which locals claim were made by the fairies. They may look easy to walk on, but those who take these paths never return. Many times, people have seen strange creatures here, creatures beyond explanation. At night, mysterious lights often appear on the mountain, which has become a common sight. Even as one approaches this mountain, an overwhelming sense of fear begins to take hold. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. I woke the next morning to the sound of distant bells. For a second, I thought it was church bells, but then I remembered where I was. In Chitral, it was the goats, their metal collars clinking as herders drove them through the narrow lanes. The air smelled of wood smoke and damp earth, with a faint sweetness from the walnut trees nearby. I checked my watch, 7:18 a.m., and stepped out of the guest house. The streets were quiet, except for a boy sweeping dust in front of a small shop. I spent most of the morning wandering the bazaar. Women in bright shawls haggled over fruit, while older men sat cross-legged in front of tea houses, watching the flow of people. Every stall seemed alive with color. Pomegranates piled like jewels, copper trays that gleamed in the sun. But whenever I looked up, past the roofs, the mountains framed everything. And no matter where I stood, Terichmir loomed. Its upper slopes seemed darker than the others, as though shadow clung there longer than it should. I paused near a spice seller's shop, pretending to study his jars of saffron, when the old man behind the counter suddenly asked, "You're here for the mountain?" His voice was low, almost swallowed by the market noise. I shook my head quickly. "Just traveling." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The mountain calls those it wants. Be careful what you hear at night." Then he turned away, leaving me unsettled. By afternoon, the weather shifted. The sky turned silver, and a fine drizzle began. I walked back toward my guest house, umbrella tapping the stones. That was when I noticed a man standing across the road. He was tall, wrapped in a dark wool shawl. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even try to get out of the rain. His gaze followed me until I stepped through the door of the guest house. When I glanced back through the window, he was gone. Inside, the owner, a kind woman in her 50s, asked me if I had gone near Terichmir. Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp. I said no, though I admitted I'd been curious. She lowered her voice. "Don't. Too many people. They think it's just a hike. But the paths, they're not for us." She busied herself with pouring tea before I could press her further. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rain hammered the roof in sheets, and the wind moaned down from the mountains. At 2:13 a.m., my phone vibrated on the nightstand. Not from a message or a call. The screen just lit up, camera app opening on its own. The lens faced the balcony doors, and in the reflection of the glass, I thought I saw a faint bluish glow, pulsing from somewhere outside. I grabbed the phone, heart racing, but the light was gone the moment I slid the door open. The rain had stopped, leaving only the dripping sound of water sliding from the roof. I forced myself back to bed, telling myself it was fatigue, a glitch, maybe even the storm. But minutes later, a sound came, 3 sharp knocks. They echoed from the window by my bed. My room was on the second floor, no ledge, no balcony, nothing anyone could stand on. I froze, barely breathing. The knocks came again, softer this time, almost hesitant. I gathered courage and yanked the curtain aside. Nothing, just the slick, black glass reflecting my own pale face. Morning brought a false sense of normal. I convinced myself it had been a dream. I ate breakfast in the courtyard, flatbread with honey, strong tea, and told myself I'd stay busy, maybe visit the fort or the museum. But everywhere I went, People seemed to drop their voices when I passed. Conversations ended abruptly. It wasn't hostile exactly, but it was as though I was carrying something with me they didn't want near. I turned to see an old shepherd leaning on his staff, goats clustered behind him. His face was lined, his eyes wary. "These are not for you," he said. "Go back to the town." I tried to ask what it meant, but he only shook his head and guided his flock away. His words echoed in my mind long after he was gone. By the time I returned to the guest house, dusk had fallen. The mountain loomed even darker, its upper ridges shrouded in mist. I told myself I would stay away, respect the warnings, but as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the strange blue light, the man in the rain, the knocking on my window. Fear and curiosity wrestled inside me until, just before dawn, one side won. I would go closer, not to climb, not to explore far, just close enough to see what secrets the slopes might hold. The morning I set out, the valley was hushed. Even the call to prayer sounded muted, swallowed by low clouds that clung to the mountainsides. I packed light, water, bread, a small flashlight, and my phone. The guest house owner caught me in the doorway and asked where I was going. I lied, said I planned to visit the river. She only nodded, but I knew she didn't believe me. The road out of town wound between terraced fields. Farmers worked in silence, bending low over their crops. No one raised a hand in greeting. By 9:47 a.m., I was alone, the town hidden behind the curve of the valley. Ahead, Terichmir's slopes rose like a wall, its ridges disappearing into cloud. The closer I came, the heavier the air felt, as though the mountain itself pressed down on me. I reached a narrow trail that branched off the road. It looked almost artificial, edges sharp, stones neatly aligned, as though someone had carved it. My boots crunched on the gravel, each step oddly amplified. The silence was total, except for the faint trickle of unseen water. After only 10 minutes, I heard it. Faint voices. They drifted down the path, soft, melodic, but in a language I couldn't recognize. I froze, listening. The voices rose, then cut off sharply, leaving the air heavier than before. At 11:05, I passed something strange. A single child's shoe, weathered and stiff, lying in the dirt. A few meters farther, a rusted lantern, glass shattered but handle intact. I picked it up, then quickly set it back down. Both objects seemed wrong, as though they had been placed there deliberately. By midday, clouds thickened overhead, dimming the light. I stopped to eat some bread and drink water, sitting on a boulder. That was when I noticed it. A shadow, long and narrow, stretching across the path behind me. My body went cold. Slowly, I turned. Nothing. The path lay empty, silent. But the feeling of being watched tightened in my chest. I pushed on, telling myself it was nerves. The path grew steeper, the stones damp underfoot. Around 2:30 p.m., rain began to fall, thin at first, then heavier. I pitched my small tent under a cluster of twisted trees and waited out the storm. Hours passed, rain drumming the canvas, until finally, around dusk, it eased. That was when the whispering began. First, I thought it was wind in the trees, but the sound was too deliberate. Low voices weaving in and out, syllables sharp and guttural. I pressed my ear to the tent fabric. The whispers circled, moving around me, though no footsteps accompanied them. My heart pounded. I shouted, "Who's there?" The voices stopped instantly, replaced by silence so deep it roared in my ears. I hardly slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I swore I heard breathing close to my face. At one point, I lit my flashlight and swept it across the trees. For a heartbeat, I saw something pale, taller than a man, narrow, unmoving, before the beam flickered and died. When I clicked it back on, the space was empty. The next morning, weary and half-numb with fear, I packed quickly. My watch read 6:42 a.m. as I started down the path again. The mountain loomed higher, mist coiling around its ridges. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I pulled it out, no signal, no message, just static filling the screen. By mid-morning, I stumbled upon a group of goat herders. Relief surged through me. Their fire crackled, meat roasting on skewers, and the smell was grounding, almost intoxicating. They waved me over, smiling, their voices calm. I sat with them, shared their bread, listened as they joked in a language I barely understood. When I asked about the mountain, one man laughed. "It is only fairies," he said, waving a hand. "They like to play. Don't worry." His tone was light, dismissive. For the first time in days, I felt safe. As night fell, I stayed near their camp. The fire was warm, the men's laughter steady. My eyes drifted closed, exhaustion pulling me under. When I woke, it was to silence. The fire still burned, embers glowing red, but the herders were gone. Not a trace of them remained. No blankets, no packs, no footsteps leading away. Just the fire, crackling quietly in the emptiness. I stood there, breath fogging in the cold air, trying to make sense of it. My watch read 3:07 a.m., the exact moment the voices had stopped the night before. I whispered to myself, they were never here. The realization turned my blood cold. That was when I heard it again, footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching from behind. I didn't turn around at first. My whole body had gone rigid, as though moving would confirm the thing behind me was real. The footsteps were steady, crunching the wet stones, drawing closer. I forced myself to spin the flashlight in my hand and snap it on. The beam cut through mist, sweeping over the empty path. No one, nothing, but the sound continued, circling me, echoing off the rocks. I bolted. My boots pounded the trail, breath tearing in my throat. The path narrowed, funneled between two sheer rock walls, and suddenly the air grew icy. My watch froze, literally. Condensation formed under the glass. The second hand stuck at 3:07 a.m. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I yanked it out, screen flashing like a strobe. Between the flickers, I saw something, tall, pale, moving with me, always just at the edge of sight. The path curved into darkness. My flashlight revealed slick stone walls glistening as though wet, but when I brushed them, my fingers came away dry. The tunnel narrowed, then widened into a corridor that didn't feel natural. Perfect angles, smooth surfaces, markings etched into the stone. Circles within circles, the same as I'd seen scratched onto the shrine. The air vibrated. A low hum pulsed through my chest, the same sound I thought I'd heard in town at night. I whispered to myself, it's just the wind. But even my voice sounded wrong, distorted, as if the tunnel swallowed it and spat it back twisted. I pushed forward, the floor descending gradually. After what felt like minutes or hours, I stumbled into a cavern so vast my light couldn't touch its edges. The ceiling disappeared into blackness. All around me, faint bluish lights floated, rising and falling like fireflies, but their glow was steady, mechanical almost. At the center of the cavern stood ruins. Stone columns half buried, toppled arches, carvings that twisted my mind when I tried to focus on them. That was when I heard it. My name, not shouted, not whispered, layered. Dozens of voices speaking in unison, soft but clear, coming from every direction. My knees weakened. I backed toward the wall, swinging my flashlight wildly, but the light bent, distorted, as though the air itself was shifting. A movement in the corner caught my eye. Something stepped forward. It was tall, far taller than a man, its outline wavering like smoke caught in form. Its head bent unnaturally, arms too long, and where its face should have been, light shimmered faintly. My breath hitched. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs locked. The voices grew louder, chanting now, overlapping, the cavern trembling with each syllable. My phone in my pocket buzzed again. I ripped it out, its camera had opened on its own, recording. On the screen, I didn't see the cavern. I saw myself, standing in total darkness, something luminous behind me. Inches away, I dropped the phone. The chanting stopped instantly. Silence slammed down. My ears rang in the void. Then, from directly behind me, a single breath, slow, deliberate, hot against my neck. I spun, flashlight trembling, and the beam caught a wall. But it wasn't stone anymore. It was glass-like, reflective. My own face stared back, but it didn't mimic me. Its eyes blinked out of sync, mouth curving upward when mine stayed still. I stumbled back, hitting something solid. Fingers brushed my shoulder. Cold, long, impossibly thin. I screamed, bolting toward the tunnel I'd come through. But the path was no longer the same. The neat stone corridor was gone. In its place sprawled endless passages, branching like veins, each swallowed in blackness. I ran blindly, turning left, then right, but every path looked identical. My flashlight flickered, then died. In the suffocating dark, I felt the air shift with movement around me. Dozens of footsteps now, circling, closing in. My breathing grew ragged, heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I stopped, pressing my back to a wall, trying to steady myself. That was when faint lights appeared again, dotting the tunnel ahead. They pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, illuminating just enough to reveal shapes. Figures, tall and narrow, standing perfectly still. One by one, their heads turned toward me. Not in unison, delayed, as if each took its time to notice. I whispered, "Please." Though I didn't know who I was begging, the figures began to move, slow and deliberate, their outlines hazy but their presence crushing. The tunnel seemed to shrink with every step they took. The lights intensified, blinding, until all I could see was white. When it faded, I was standing in the cavern again. The ruins loomed, the whispers returned, and the voices spoke one word this time. My name, drawn out, echoing, vibrating in my chest. I turned, desperate for escape, and saw a path sloping upward. I sprinted, feet slipping on the slick surface, lungs burning. Behind me, the voices rose into a frenzy, the hum growing so loud it rattled my teeth. I pushed harder, scrambling, clawing upward until at last I saw a faint glow ahead. An exit. I stumbled through, gasping, collapsing onto damp earth. Cold night air rushed into my lungs. I looked back, expecting the cavern, but the path behind me was gone. In its place stretched another corridor, darker than anything I'd seen, stretching into black infinity. The whispers hadn't stopped. They were closer now, as if the mountain itself had swallowed me whole. And as I stood, shaking, I realized I no longer knew which way led out, or if there had ever been a way out at all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more.